So in this webinar, so just a quick rundown of what we're going to go through. So quickly going to go through employee turnover, statistics of that, and what the landscape looks like in the UK. Then we're going to move on to how inductions improve retention and the sort of studies and research behind that and our own findings as well. Then we're going to look at what actually makes a good induction. So this is where we start to get into the strategies, and then we'll give you a breakdown of the strategies and a sort of summary of all the key takeaways at the end.
So the first subject we want to cover and why it's very important in the UK over past 5 years, the employee turnover has been steadily increasing. So if we look at 2019, the figure was at 25.8%, meaning 1 in 4 people you hire would leave. However, current year, the estimated figures is 35.6%. Now that means that's 1 in 3 people leaving. So obviously it's quite a significant jump, and the reason why we decided to schedule this webinar to talk you through what are the reasons behind that.
So what that translates to then in pound signs is it costs roughly £7,729 for every new hire, and that is based on the average UK salary, with the average UK salary, with it being 26.1% of the average UK salary. So obviously it's quite a significant amount of money, particularly for companies that, you know, if you've got a high headcount and you're dealing with turnover, whether it be large or small, there's still a significant cost sink there. And then on top of that as well, we've also got the time it takes to hire. So you've got delays in filling the position, but then also productivity loss from not having that role filled quickly enough, or having people join and then leave. So there's a direct cost obviously linked to the issue.
So firstly, what we want to do is to cover some of the factors, what causes the employee turnover to happen. So first is quite straightforward. It's bad hiring processes, toxic work culture. What that means when a job isn't a good fit for the employee, and it's blamed on a toxic work culture. Now, the word toxic is very broad and has a lot of meanings. It's one of the examples of when a toxic work culture is quoted is when an employer sets expectations when the employer themselves did not ensure that the employee has the knowledge or capacity to do the set task at hand, and therefore that makes them label the environment as toxic. So that's one of the lead causes. The next one is growth and development. So PwC's Future of Recruiting report found that people are willing to forego 12% of their salary for jobs with better training. And that means that continuous development is key to retaining a motivated workforce, mainly as people like to see where they will be in 2, 5, maybe 10 years' time. If an employer can offer a clear path to success, people are less motivated by the financial gain and more by the professional. So they will stick around more, they'll be a lot more engaged, and they will actually perform better on the back of it. And then third one is lack of feedback. So a Gallup study shows that workers whose feedback left them with positive feelings are about 4 times more likely to be engaged. So the easiest way to overcome this is to have a clear mechanism of providing feedback at all levels of business. Just knowing that employees can provide feedback and it will reach relevant people motivates the said employee to think how to improve their role, how to do things better. So it's a very important part of employee process as well.
Yeah, the next one is lack of purpose. So there's actually a LinkedIn talent trend survey which showed that companies with more purposeful missions saw 49% lower attrition. What that means is attrition is the process of reducing something's strength over time if there's sustained pressure. So essentially there was an overall business improvement of reducing that pressure when there was a good sorry, I mixed up my words. when there was a purposeful mission in place at that company. The next one is relationships. So employees are increasingly reevaluating their relationships with their employers. So again, another bit of research by McKinsey found that the percentage of people leaving their jobs without actually having another job in hand was around 40%. That's quite a significant amount of people that are leaving without a backup plan, and that sort of says to me and says to a lot of people that were doing this research that people are leaving for reasons other than personal gain. They were leaving because they were dissatisfied, or there was something in the company they weren't quite happy with. So they were willing to forego the option of having something waiting for them and just get out and leave the company. And the last one sort of ties into what Ignis said at the start with culture and sort of toxic workplaces. So nearly a quarter of people dread going into work as they don't feel safe expressing their opinions and their thoughts. People like to be valued in the sense that, you know, they want to express what their opinions are of their role, of their company, of their managers, and, you know, be encouraged to speak their thoughts rather than be afraid to. So essentially what all that boils down to is there's one common factor that links all of these together, and that is engagement and communication. So whether it be lack of feedback, bad hiring procedures, purpose, culture, growth development, and relationship, all of these are elements which need to be properly communicated to ensure that your employee knows what they're onboarding to, what the company they're coming into, and what's expected of them, and also what they can expect of the employer, so that you don't have this high turnover rate where sort of expectations aren't met and views aren't aligned.
So we obviously did our research, and what we found that a study covered by SHRM that looked at 300,000 plus HR and business members covering 150 million employers. The message was clear that the key is to engage important stakeholders and new employees the same. So you need to pay as much attention to new person as to your boss, basically. Faster learning curve for new hires, improved communication, and resulted in more productive and engaged workforce. And this 60% of this mostly boils down to onboarding new employees effectively by maximizing the success.
And now we'll start getting into what that looks like in terms of turnover. So where we started with all of this. So for year one, again, this is based off industry studies that have already been done. 20% of turnover happens within the first 45 days of employment. That there tells me there's an obvious misalignment with, as I mentioned earlier, expectations of the company and the employee itself. And 40% of employee turnover occurs within the first year, but two out of three of those do so within the first 6 months. So there's a very obvious misalignment between the two parties there, where in that first 6 months, you know, they're not even making it to the 7th month marker because there's already issues that are causing people to leave. If we go back to previous stats where people were leaving, you know, 40% of people were leaving without another job in hand. You know, there isn't studies which sort of correlate these two things, but you know, we can sort of make inferences here that people could well be not getting the job they thought they were getting and leaving quite quickly. And then overall first year based on induction. So we're going to start introducing induction stats now and how that improves things. So 2 separate studies, both conducted slightly differently, but both with similar results. So Aberdeen Group, they found in their study that an engaging onboarding program retained 91% of their first year workers, which obviously is a massive increase. And a Brandon Hall Group study found that a good onboarding program can improve retention by as much as 82%. So obviously, there is a significant link between communication, engagement, onboarding, and the early day communication and engagement with your employee with the first year retention specifically. But we can go a bit further than that and look at then the first 3 years and then after 3 years. So in the first 3 years, 69% of employees who go through a well-managed onboarding process have a more positive view of their workplace and will be with the company for at least 3 years. So well-managed onboarding programs have a lasting effect. And then it's a sort of similar story after 3 years as well. Obviously, as you can expect, the figure reduces slightly, but albeit significantly enhanced by the good onboarding program, where new employees went through a structured onboarding program were 58% more likely to be with the organization after 3 years.
So overall, to recap, that communication is a key whenever you want to retain your employees. So your induction process is your opportunity to engage and communicate, set employees up for success with a good first impression. And you know the saying is, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. So from very start until the very end of their employment, you need to follow a good procedure. And we hope after this webinar, you will have a bit of an idea what that looks like.
Yeah. So this is the bit that I imagine the ones that you've joined today have come for. And we're going to get straight into the strategies that we think can help you achieve that. So first one is pre-boarding. Pre-boarding is all about engaging and communicating before entering site. So this refers specifically to self-paced learning and welcoming new hires. So rather than there being a sort of radio silence between accepting job offer and them stepping foot on site in their first day, instead we'd encourage you actively engage with that employee, address any potential questions before they're even asked, so that when they arrive, they're armed with information on day one, they understand what's to be expected, and they don't feel there could be a lot of overwhelm on the first day with a new environment, new people. But if that engagement starts early, you can reduce that and make sure that, one, information is all understood, two, they've done it on their own at their own pace without having to sort of cram it into days 1 and 2, and two, they feel a bit more welcomed. So just to sort of summarize in the sort of bullet points we got on screen, gives confidence in the company. People like to see they're being taken care of, and the company's got a good direction and understanding of, this is what I expect from you, this is what needs to be achieved in the next couple of weeks, this is what needs to be done by, and here's the help you can get in return. Engaged and excited new starter. So, accepting a job offer is obviously an exciting moment in a lot of people's lives, and if that sort of engagement is started from there on out, you can sort of foster that into people being sort of advocates of your company and being excited to start, and being happy on their first day rather than a little bit overwhelmed and anxious. The pre-site inductions, like I said, with the self-paced learning, so people value a lot of flexibility and convenience, especially if there's things like tech involved, where people can do it on their mobile phones, because it makes it that much more familiar. We all have a phone in our pockets, so if you can send induction material to a phone, and in a couple of evenings and a couple of hours a night, they can just sort of scroll through it, tick things off, and sort of go through things at their own pace and digest it. It just makes that process a little bit more familiar for that person. And like I said before, they're armed on day one with information that they can use straight away.
So to give a good example of pre-boarding and what benefits it might have, we have seen that a good pre-boarding process allows people to blend in easier. By inducting people before they show up, not only saves time to the employer doing course on the first thing in the morning, but also new starters don't feel completely out of place when they arrive. Just by implementing the good pre-boarding process, we have seen a 22% decrease in day one no-shows across multiple organizations, meaning that people already feel like they're part of a bigger picture and are more likely to turn up and carry out the job that's needed doing.
The next one then is learning styles. So this one's all about, rather than having sort of one generic system in place, but instead accommodating for different learning preferences. So creating varied content. Not everyone learns the same way, breaking up content and delivering it in different ways that are more engaging, such as quizzes and videos. You could even use an interactive platform to make it a little bit more dynamic and suit sort of modern learning preferences. So you've got the sort of millennial age and Gen Z age that are very familiar, like I said before, with mobile phones, things like that. Sometimes content is just digested easier just by being behind the screen instead. And it's better organized for clarity and a clear view of tasks ahead. So, if you've got a little red bubble saying, hey, look, this is outstanding, you know that that's a task that needs to be done, opposed to a stapled document with lots of checkboxes that can be quite hard to sift through or find information that you need. So varied content, obviously a lot better for retention. If you're including videos and quizzes combined, so you maybe have a module that have some written text, a video, and then a quiz to follow, it's a lot more likely that the retention of that information and also engagement of that employee is going to be much higher. Caters for a wide range of new hires. So if you've got a high headcount, again, you're sort of catering to the masses there of anyone that could potentially be coming in. It's a lot more modern and forward thinking, again, with the confidence. People like to see that their company's taken time into developing a program that fosters their success. You can also track people's progress with technology options, sorry. And then you can also give personalized feedback and support. So you could set up checkpoints, if you like, and say, after they've completed this quiz, I'm going to sort of have a look, see what's going on, see who's passed, see who's failed. Let me offer some support, or these guys have passed. Let's set up another checkpoint and check on them again in the future. So just about sort of accommodating different styles there.
Right. So a good example of what Sam just covered is considering a wall of text and what implications it has. Usually when you condense it into manageable modules, you have no idea how much engagement it gives you, as well as it forces people to retain information for longer. So we looked at multiple studies on this subject, and what people find is an average person can only concentrate on a task for only 15 to 20 minutes. That means that's how long you have to deliver your information. Anything afterwards, it comes into one ear, goes out the other. So that's why we are recommending to split up your information into manageable modules. So the way that can look like, if you have a wide subject to cover, you set a 15-minute video, you do a quick test, you might take a break, you come back, do another module, again, 15 to 20 minutes, no longer. And that way you will ensure that people are more engaged and have information retained rather than just doing a box ticking exercise. Sorry.
We know what you meant.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is tailored induction material. This one's particularly important. So when we say tailored induction material, what we're referring to is job and site specific information. So avoiding using a generic template, like Ignas said, with massive walls of text that sort of goes out to everyone. Instead, rather than creating, obviously we're not saying create an individual induction, but create categories of this induction goes out to this job role, this induction goes out to this site, just so that the information that they're receiving is relevant to their role. It's all role specific. There's a lot of benefits there for sort of health and safety. It's a lot more relatable to their tasks and duties. So again, rather than reading through a wall of text and thinking, well, actually, none of that relates to me, and then the result of that is them being less engaged, sort of engaging them with their role and what their responsibilities are. Improves the understanding of what their job requirements are, and then also shows that their role is valued and appreciated. So if there's a specific induction for that site and for that role, they know that you as a company have taken time to develop that and make sure that people coming into that seat understand what is expected.
So a good example of tailoring material is we had a large construction business that came to us and asked for advice. So obviously we obliged and we helped. And after tailoring their inductions training to a per role basis and cutting out anything that wasn't needed for them to do their role or wasn't mandatory for the site, they found after carrying out a survey that staff were 64% more likely to take up more accountability within their role, as well as didn't feel burnout after undergoing their onboarding process. Sometimes you find that after an intensive week of starting a new role, you can feel a bit spent and unlikely to take up more accountability because you feel like there's going to be a lot more of that rather than just you doing your job. So a very tailored approach can help with your staff and how much responsibility they can take on, which I think is a very powerful kind of thing to have.
Yeah, cool. Employee roadmaps. So this refers to both pre-boarding and the entire onboarding process. So guiding employees through their first weeks and days. People quite like to be in control and understand what's expected of them. So if you can provide them some sort of systematic approach to, these are all the tasks I need you to complete, both before arrival and during your time on site over the next couple of weeks. People like to prepare for those in advance and understand what's coming. So that sort of gives them a little bit of peace of mind. But it's also, you could also do it just by setting up notifications, notifications and reminders to sort of prompt action on certain modules and ensure things are completed by sort of desired completion dates. So it's a lot more organized and more efficient. Again, with the confidence thing, a lot of these strategies are aimed at sort of improving employee confidence because the confidence of the employee is ultimately directly correlated with their engagement with you as an employer. Gives them a step-by-step action plan. It sort of takes some of the thinking away. Again, going back to the sort of staple document example of people having to flick through and sort of manually find things of what they need to do or when it needs to be completed by, it's a lot harder for them to want to get involved with it. Whereas if you just say, hey, look, here's all the dates, it's all on the platform, they get reminders, they can just think, oh, okay, I need to go do that one now. Like I said, it ensures the training is completed on time. And as I briefly touched on before, you can track progress and review and support at each stage. So setting those checkpoints to say the XYZ should have been completed at this date, or this employee should be at this stage in their sort of onboarding process at this date. Let's have a look at where they're at and sort of being able to review that.
Right. So another example, we actually carried out a survey that looked at what happened after the customers or clients of ours implemented a clear roadmap for their users, as well as implemented the tools to inform the users when they need it. The findings were interesting to say the least. So what we found after setting a clear roadmap, rather than just telling a person, yeah, we need you to go there, but setting it out and saying, right, so you're going to do X, Y, and Z. And when you get at the end, something good will happen. So the study found that when we take a new starter without a roadmap, it takes them twice as long to get to the level where they are ready to be promoted or taking a higher role within the organization. So a clear roadmap just cuts that time in half, meaning you can plan ahead quicker rather than waiting for that one person to pick up the slack. So if you let them see where they're going and what's the journey, they will do it quicker rather than having to approach you directly and asking, okay, so what's the next step I need to take? So having that preset is very helpful.
Making the most of tech. So I think I briefly sort of skipped ahead of myself a little bit on one of the previous slides. But it's the modern approach to induction. So technology can help users better navigate resources and understand what's required. So they're a valuable tool in helping employees feel more connected to the company and their role from the very beginning, as we mentioned with the pre-boarding and then the continued onboarding. If they have a hub that they can just log into and say, okay, all my documents are there, everything I need is in that platform. They can go in there, review, find it, it's all categorized, and any information that they need doesn't go missing like it could do with printed documents, for example, or the PowerPoint that you might deliver on days 1 and 2. A lot of that information might be forgotten, or their initial startup documents lost. So that hub just acts as, one, a storage space, but two, also an easy way to sort of navigate through stuff. So it's a lot more convenient, avoids travel and scheduling conflicts, missing information, and reducing a burden on employees. So things like people arriving to do their inductions before they actually start their job. Instead, you could do a lot of it online and just have them travel at a later date or travel on their first day, whenever it may be. That sort of ties in with the scheduling conflicts, things like that. More interactive. I won't go into this one too much. Obviously, we've covered that a lot, but technology helps people retain things a lot better, especially the sort of younger generations in the modern era. Again, access to information is made easier, and it's also a way of consistently delivering the inductions for all employees. So you may have certain sites with the same sort of job role and category of people, with the only difference being the site, but their job role induction is done slightly different because it's under a different manager. This tech would act as a central hub for all of that. So you may have one person at the top of the chain for each department that administers the content and said, this job role needs this job role needs this. And then you could set reminders to review certain content rather than things being created on an ad hoc basis or created again because they're missing. So it really sort of brings everything together and ensures you've got a proper process in place for all of that.
Right. I have some notes here about how to cover technology, but I think I'll share a comical story. We had a customer came to us, and we had to digitize their platform, as they were a large organization being audited almost daily. And what they have done, because of a high staff turnover and not using technology, they had rented a storage area where they kept the records, so the induction records, employee records, all manners of paperwork. And I believe it was a task of 2 full-time employees just to sit there and bring up the records they needed on daily basis, which I find it comical considering you have cloud solutions these days where everything is stored by the system, everything's available at a touch of a button. So I thought I'll just share that comical situation where you have someone who refuses to move with the time and utilize the tech. And that's why we can't stress enough how important it is to use tools available out there, to use technology, because one, you can get rid of the storage area, and two, you can let go 2 people off, which is always a good thing. But yeah, it's a comical thing. I thought I'll share it instead of some statistics noted in my notes.
I'm not sure I want to be one of the people looking through the documents. That sounds like a bit of a task.
Yeah, not the most fun you can ever have.
I think this is the last of the strategies before we sort of go into the sort of key takeaways. Leveraging your brand and making it a warm welcome. So your brand is one of your biggest assets. So enhanced engagement by creating a sort of professional, consistent, and personalized experience that reinforces your employer reputation and the employee's sense of belonging. So, rather than having sort of, if you've got a technology solution already, rather than having that tech sit on the outside branded as something else, you can sort of bring it into your sort of tech stack, make it your own, and make the employee feel like, oh, wow, they got their own sort of platform for this. That's pretty good. And the same with, if you're doing manual induction still, whether it be a PowerPoint or whatever it may be, just sort of putting your flair on it. It's just that it feels a little bit more like your company. As mentioned before, you don't get a second chance to make first impressions. So having your brand on it and making it look really professional and feel professional, it's going to help a lot. the personalization aspect of it, it sort of reflects the culture and the things that you're trying to get forward to your employees in the early days. So it's really engaging them from the start and making them think, oh yeah, I'm behind the company, I'm behind the mission. This is a company that I belong to. Also, brand awareness. If you've got, like I said before, lots of employees and you're a company with a high headcount, then being able to use a platform like this just to share your brand is huge brand awareness. And yeah, just to cover that one again, avoids confusion with tech sitting outside of the company. Sort of brings that in.
So again, I'm the study guy. So what we actually discovered is that when you have a branded solution, when your material is branded, when people see your logo, your colors from day one, they are 5 times more likely to engage with the system, the service, or the product if they can tell. So even from pre-boarding, let's say you use a cloud solution, it comes from company A, and the person is going to a job next week, let's say for Eon, they're not going to open it. They think it's spam, it's something else. So you need to ensure that from the very first message they receive to the very last one, it's all branded, it's all in there. It reflects you, your company, and the people are engaging with that. It's a very important aspect of the advice we can give you. Make sure you don't just grab a presentation of the internet, health and safety 2023 best practices, and then just deliver it with NHS logo on top while you're a car mechanic firm, whatever. So that could come across superficial. So that's one of the advices. So just to recap, so the key takeaways of the 6 strategies that we covered. So pre-boarding, maintain dialogue, self-paced learning, familiarity, and trust and confidence. Those are the key takeaways from that one. Learning styles, you need to cater for everyone, better info retention, forward thinking, and personalized feedback. Another good one, tailor inductions, keep it relevant, emphasize role value, align expectations, make sure they're useful from day one. Employee roadmaps, clarity of tasks, future expectations, support at checkpoints, and it gives confidence in the company. Now technology, it makes it easier for the user. It prioritizes interactivity, access to information, and it ensures consistent delivery. And then finally, leveraging your brand. First impressions matter. You feel like you belong to a mission. You need to avoid outside tech, as well as you need to send a clear, consistent message.